What is up, Fantasy Alarm family? Welcome on in. It is Friday, so you know what that means. Andrew Cooper here, and I'm bringing on a guest. I scheduled Jakob Sanderson for this one a while back, knowing that Week 18 was going to be tricky, was going to be dicey. And then right before we got into it, I reached out to Sanderson. I said, dude, do you want to do Week 18 talk, or do you want to talk fantasy football playoffs over at FFPC? And the verdict?
The verdict is the playoff challenge. I mean, that is my favorite tournament in entirety of the fantasy like landscape. I look forward to it so much every single year. I'm Canadian, so I think people know. I'm currently still stuck in my parents' basement in Winnipeg, hence the album choices on the walls, because flights are just impossible. So, I mean, I grew up, my favorite way to play fantasy sports. First way I ever played fantasy sports was playoff hockey pools, which go crazy in Canada. And it's always that mix of like you're betting on players, but more so you're betting on the teams you think you're going to go far. And you're kind of like getting there with whoever your drafting partner is. For me, it was always my dad. We'd get there and we'd like do our brackets, who we think is going to go farther. And that's really how the FFPC Playoff Challenge works. You're constructing a bracket. You're telling yourself a story of how you think the playoffs are going to unfold. And then you're slotting in the players kind of from there. And that combination of the two things, I think, makes it really, really fun. And also for me, a little bit nostalgic.
Dude, I've never done playoff hockey. I didn't even know they did that. That sounds, because playoff
it's like
hockey,
the core fantasy sport thing to in Canada. I don't know how that much it goes to America, but it's the simplest in the sense you only do points. You're just who's gonna score points. But
really?
It's just how I feel so many people in Canada got started doing fantasy sports in some format. But it's you'd always get the year where the best player in the league is on a 7 seed. It's how far do they go? They're only gonna play one round, and yeah.
Dude, so that's the thing. Real ball knowers know. It's pretty much unanimously admitted that playoff hockey is the best. It's the most electric. You really can't beat it. You really can't.
Incredible.
So dude, I got to get in on that, man. Let me know where you're playing that, dude, because I got to get down on that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what we're doing today, folks, all year long on Friday, I brought in a guest, just friends from around the industry, people I respect, and we do FFPC. If you want to play over on FFPC, go get set up now. Use promo code ALARM at myffpc.com. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. And let me tell you, the trick is deposit $45 because these contests cost $35. Mathematically, 45 plus 25 gives you 2 entries into these puppies. There's a $35 one and a $200 one. And man, they're awesome, dude. So for those that have been following along every week with us, the FFPC weekly challenge, basically there's no draft, no salary, none of that nonsense. You can pick anyone you want, but you can't pick 2 players from the same team. And the playoff challenge version is that with another layer, 3D version, where you can only pick 1 player from each team, but that's your team for the entirety of playoffs. And so you got to kind of map things out a little bit, at least who's going to the Super Bowl or not. And the Super Bowl, the points are doubled. So you really got to make sure you got good players in that, man. So it's super interesting. Before we jump in and start looking at teams and players, Jakob, is there any because I know you've been doing this for years. Like I said, one of the great thinkers. If you don't check out his Substack, thinking about thinking, it really changes the way you think about a lot of things, and I love it. So that's why we brought you on. But anything that jumps strategy wise, where you're okay, you don't want to do this. You almost have to do this. Little things that you've picked up along the way.
For sure. So, I usually do a big blast of FFPC Playoff Challenge content in next week because it's the one thing where you we talk about these sort of playoff drafts you can do as you go along. The Playoff Challenge, you do really need to know the bracket. So we're going to kind of wing it a little bit today to get out ahead of it. We're going to make some assumptions, but we can also tinker as we need to next week. So,
I've named our team. Our team name is Thinking and Tinkering. That's the team name. So I'm already ahead of it, bro.
I like it. So yeah, and the reason why that's so essential. So the way that this format works, with the 14 team playoff setup, is basically you get to pick real players, as in players that play positions from 10 teams, and then you're going to have two what we typically call soft fades. So that's your kicker, that's your defense, and then two hard fades. You don't take anyone from that team.
Right.
The most like integral rule is basically it's extremely difficult to win this tournament if you don't get your fades right. So whatever teams you have hard fading, you've got to make sure those teams are out in round one. And with some exceptions, it's possible a kicker or defense could go on a Linsanity run over a couple of weeks, but more than likely, you want your soft fades to also be out of there in week one. And I think like the most common and like shockingly common mistake that I see in some of these lineups is people just not fully appreciating how much you need to be correct in terms of who wins in round one. And so you'll see like a lot of the way people approach it is like, let's say you have like the Texans end up playing. It would especially be crazy if the Steelers won this. Let's say the Texans play the Steelers. I bet what you'll see a lot of is people being like, man, like that Texans offense is kind of gross, but their defense is so good. So I'll just take the Texans defense. And then I don't want to take anyone on the Steelers. So I'll just hard fade them. That's probably not the plan. I mean, like maybe the Texans defense goes so crazy they actually outscore Nico Collins over 2 games. That's possible. Right. It's not that likely though. Like if you're running the simulation,
you don't want that.
That's a pretty limited outcome that you're betting on. And then what you'll also see on the flip side is you'll get these fun games where people don't want to choose. They just want to be like, look, I'll just take, let's say it's like Eagles and Rams play each other in week one. People are like, oh man, that's going to be tough. Like, I don't know what to do. I'll just take Saquon. I'll take Puka. You can only do that for like 2 matchups where you can hedge your bets. And I think people too frequently just hedge their bets on sort of the funner teams, even though you can actually get a lot more leverage by soft fading or hard fading some of these teams, especially when there's a running back, right? Like if you want to play the Rams to win that game, and you think the Eagles are going to lose, like Saquon's probably not going to have that great of a game if they lose in round one. So, you can just go ahead and fade him and hope that they lose and be right. You have to play this thing under the assumption you're right. Otherwise, you're kind of drawn dead.
Exactly. And we've seen exactly that where it's like people are leaning on the stars of some of these teams that they think are going to lose. And what ends up happening, like a couple of years ago, the great Jake Ferguson game, right? When the Cowboys lost and Jake Ferguson in tight end premium put up like 40 points, and you didn't necessarily have to have him, but if you faded CeeDee Lamb and started Jake Ferguson, who outscored Lamb in the one game they played, you just got to leg up on everybody. So it's like those are the little things. Yeah, you don't want to be picking running backs that you think are going to lose. So yeah, I've gone through the history of this one. And again, there's the beauty of it is that, Jacob just went through a lot of the hard and fast rules of like kind of what you want to happen, what you don't want to happen. On the flip side, there's some good things in terms of you don't necessarily have to have like your quarterback play in the Super Bowl, right? Like we've seen years where, yes, there was a quarterback that most of the teams that finished top 10 had him, but we've also seen years where it was Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl that you needed to have, or it was Christian McCaffrey, or there was a year where pretty much, I think it was like 9 of the top 10 teams had Josh Allen. He didn't even go to the Super Bowl, right? So there's different ways to play it as long as you match it up right, but definitely want to keep in mind your narratives. And you can't have like too many super conflicting narratives. Like if your quarterback gets knocked out in the first round, you're dead. That we know.
Yeah, like it's what Cooper's hitting on is that it's relative scoring is what it comes down to, right? So it's not, you don't need to have the highest scoring quarterback. You need to have the highest scoring quarterback relative to other quarterbacks, relative to the other positions, relative to one another. So like, let's take an example. The 49ers are an easy one, I think, or the Seahawks. If they get to the Super Bowl, it's obviously possible that Purdy or Darnold wind up optimal, but it's still probably not probable. It's more likely that you would want JSN from the Seahawks or you'd want McCaffrey from the 49ers in the event that they go all the way to the Super Bowl, because those quarterbacks are probably just a straight up underdog to outscore their best skill player, or at least it's going to probably be very even. Compare that to, though, like a team like the Eagles or a team like the Bills, where if that team gets the Super Bowl, like the Patriots would be, the best example of this. If the Patriots get to the Super Bowl, you almost certainly want Drake May.
Right.
You know, like he is just responsible for such a high percentage of the points that team scores. I'd say very similarly about the Jaguars. You know, like everything runs through Trevor Lawrence. The passing game is spread out amongst multiple pieces. If they get to the Super Bowl, he's almost certainly the guy you want from the Jaguars. So you can do these types of Super Bowls, though. We're like trying to think of a decent example. Probably the Texans would be the best case, where like in a Texans versus Seahawks Super Bowl, for instance, I think probably, you know, it doesn't always have to go this way, but it's very realistic to think that neither Stroud or Darnold are the optimal quarterback in the
Right.
Texans Seahawks Super Bowl. But that in fact, Collins and JSN are either outscoring or are very similar to their quarterbacks. And you want the two wide receivers from those teams. And then you want like Allen or May or Hurts or some quarterback who plays 2 or 3 games, gets knocked out, but is scoring like 20 points more than their top skill player.
Bingo. That's what actually happened. That exact thing happened. I think it was 3 years ago, where Patrick Mahomes was the top scoring quarterback, but
Yeah.
Travis Kelce scored so many more points than the other tight ends, right? And it was the Eagles versus the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and Kelce outscored Goddard by a mile and everybody else. That you actually didn't like. Mahomes wasn't optimal, despite him being the highest scoring player in the entire contest, because you want the relative position. Like Jalen Hurts only scored a little bit less than him, but Kelce scored so much more than all the other tight ends that you kind of had to have him. So that's what makes it so much fun. So folks, it's full PPR. You're starting it's one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 4 flexes, and then a kicker and defense. And what I did here to make things a little easier for us when we jump in here is I took all the teams that are in here, and I sorted them by conference odds rather than Super Bowl odds. I put the Super Bowl odds in of them winning the whole thing, but winning actually isn't important. Getting there is what's important, right? So you agree it's the move here is to sort by conference odds.
For sure. Yeah, winning the Super Bowl is, I mean, I guess it's like a little relevant in the sense that teams that win tend to score more, but it's
Right.
like really elementary. You know, it's really what matters is who gets there. And the last thing I think I'd touch on as being an essential, like kind of rule or thing to think about, and Cooper already kind of touched on it, um, is basically whoever you're playing to go very far, that's where you want to be more conventional. Because over the longer sample, right, if they play 3 games, 4 games, the likelihood is that the best player is going to be the highest scoring player on that team. The places where you want to get different, and you want to get different somewhere because there's a finite number of options. If you just pick the highest projected player from every team, you're going to have a duplicated lineup, and it's going to make your chance to win a bunch of money very difficult. Where you want to get different is the teams you think can lose once. The best example I always think about in this is the Vikings a couple of years ago, where Jefferson's coming off this massive season, but no one really thought the Vikings were even that good. Like they were kind of that fraudulent team that like they won a bunch of games by like a field goal. But Jefferson was so obviously the Viking that he was just played a ton. Like everybody was in on Justin Jefferson that year. He ends up flopping in that tournament. And if you just either went with Hawkinson, who I think outscored him, or just faded the entirety of the Vikings team, you're in a way better spot. The other example I'd point to is
Just
the
real quick on that
Packers.
one, not to
Yeah,
interrupt, but that year, I was actually just looking at that year when I was writing an article on strategy. The guy that won did exactly that, and he had 4 tight ends in his lineup, and it's tight
nice.
end premium, and at least 2 of
Yeah,
them, it was Hawkinson and Ferguson went off in one game in the first, the one game where they lost, they went off and then they just disappeared, and that was optimal outcome. To just the
for
people that
sure.
started Lamb, the people that started Jefferson got completely rug pulled. So you got to be thinking about those things like, hey, you know what? If I think this team's out, where can I get an advantage, man? So not to jump in, but I was actually just looking at that
No,
exact year you were talking about.
yeah, I mean that's awesome. I mean the other one I always think back on is the Packers, the year they lost that frigid game to the Niners as the 1 seed, so they only played the 1 game. And it's, everyone was on Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones outscores him very easily. If they went to the Super Bowl, is Aaron Jones going to outscore Adams? Probably not over 3 games, but in 1 game, it's totally possible. And I love what you mentioned about the tight ends, because the Ferguson game last year I thought was especially interesting because tight ends, I think more than any other position. I mean, you're the expert, so maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but like just of how I perceive of how they can pile up points, I think tight ends are the most conducive to scoring points when your team sucks than like any other position. Because if you think about how that Ferguson game happened, like it's, he scores the touchdowns, but it's also when the Cowboys get behind, the defense is selling out to prevent CeeDee Lamb from hurting them with 40-yard games. If you're defending a 2-3 possession lead, they're frankly not that concerned about getting 8-yard hook routed to death by Jake Ferguson. So they'll just give that up, if you're in that scenario.
It's
so like
exactly
if you're
what
playing
happens.
if you're playing a team to lose in a tight end premium format, like Texans are a great example. If they get the Ravens and they get blown out by 2 touchdowns, like the Ravens are going to be doing everything they can not to get beat over the top by Nico Collins. If Dalton Schultz catches 7 balls for 85 yards, I don't think they give a shit,
No.
So it's like, that's kind of how you can look at some of these things where if you're already assuming something, you're assuming they lose the game. It's like, well, if they're losing the game, their star running back, their vertical wide receiver, they're in tough in that environment. But their tight end, who's just going to be catching a bunch of garbage time points, they can 100% rack them up.
And it's tight end premium. That what you described is exactly what happened. Remember that stretch with Tyler Higbee where he was just getting 12 targets every game? Go back and look at the game scripts there. And a lot of those games, they were like 20, they were down like 20 points, like the Cowboys game that year. And that's exactly what happened. The team just sat back and prevent and said, hey, go ahead and dump it down underneath. And a lot of times when your back's against the ropes and you just got to keep it moving, that's what teams do. So apps, and again, this is tight end premium. So for folks that don't know what that means, it's 1 point PPR. Tight ends get 1.5. So definitely something we want to look at there. So what we're going to do with this chart is I figured we'll go through and just real quick put any viable names that we would even consider for each of these teams real quick. And then we'll kind of play it. The thing is, you can't even go in and put your team in on FFPC yet. So I just kind of threw one of these up real quick. We'll just we'll throw one together, and then I'll put it in as soon as it's active. And folks, make sure if you want to play, just go in and reserve a spot now. Just go in and buy the contest now. I do this every year, Sanderson, where I'm like, I'm going to do 5 of these, and I go in and I put a couple in, and then I'm like, I'm going to do the other one, and then it fills, man. I had a credit, so this credit was from last that I'm using here. I had a credit to put a team in, and I didn't put it in. I'm the one that's telling everyone to do it. Like, so listen, do as I say, not as I do. Reserve your spot now because these do fill, and they're just a lot of fun, man. I mean, you go in and you look at the teams that win every year, and in hindsight, you look at them and you're like, man, yup, absolutely. But then when you think about the person building that team, it's like you realize they had a plan. They had a plan, and their plan hit. And especially when you look at, I went and looked at a couple of the teams that the guys that hit big, and they had 5 teams in, and one of their team finished in, the guy that won, he had a team that finished in first place, and one of his other teams, I think, was like in the bottom 100 out of like 15,000 people. Like just, because he's like hedging his bets. He's like, look, I'll put this one in. This is what I think on this one. And here's what I want on this one. I put in a fantasy wishing one. I will have a fantasy wishing Drake May one in there, no doubt in my mind. But yeah, so why don't we jump in? Sorted by conference winners here. Seahawks have the best odds to go to the Super Bowl. So if we're starting to Seahawks, I'm gonna throw JSN in here. Is there anything else you would consider here? I mean, like, let's say we think they're going to get rug pulled here and they're going to lose. I don't know if I'd want to go down to Barner. I hate
Seahawks.
Pass blocks.
Seahawks are a tricky one because JSN hits in basically every circumstance, right? Like if they end up losing a game, it's very unlikely, I think, that like Walker's terrible in negative script. Like if you want Walker, you want him in positive script. And if they're going to win games, then JSN's going to outscore him over multiple games. So I think that kind of takes him out of the consideration set. Charbonnet, I guess, a little better in negative script, but he just projects so much worse. Darnold, similarly, like if they lose, you don't want their quarterback. And if they win to the Super Bowl, you probably just want JSN. So to me, if I'm not going JSN, I'm probably not taking any of their skill players. I'm playing them to lose at that point. Either if they get the bye, they could always lose in round 1, like you think of like or round 2, like the Titans a few years ago were an example where you could have faded the whole thing. So I would probably go to me, it's JSN or it's their defense or kicker.
If you're full fading. if you're full fade.
Yeah, like I'm going JSN or I'm going defense kicker full fade. I don't think I'm playing any other Seahawks skill player.
Yeah. To the JSN point, I saw this great stat from Brian Knowles over at FTN, and he was going through and taking every quarterback's DVOA, and he was removing the top pass catcher for that QB and seeing how that affected their DVOA. And basically, he said that Drake May, his dropped to 13.9, Stafford's dropped to 12.6 without Puka. Sam Darnold, when you take away Jackson Smith and Jigba, his DVOA dropped to negative 15.2.
Huh.
So it's just a absolute one-man show. And I think that speaks to it. It's like, maybe like I think I'm going to put JSN in most of my lineups. And if I'm doing 5 of these, maybe one of them I do kicker or defense and just kind of hedge against the Sam Darnold full-on rug pull just like last year.
Here's the weird thing about the Seahawks. So obviously their odds to win the conference are going to be way higher if they win this game this weekend. But I'm actually probably going to have a higher percentage of Seahawks fades if they win than if they lose, just because. So if San Francisco wins, they go down to 6. But if San Francisco loses, they go down to 6. If Seattle loses, they're locked into 5. I don't feel very comfortable picking them to lose to Tampa or Carolina, who I think suck ass, respectfully. Whereas if they get the 1 seed, probably their first game is more than likely home to San Francisco or the Rams. I think they're actually way more likely to lose their first game as the 1 seed hosting the Rams or Niners than they would be as the 5 seed going at Carolina or Tampa. But people hate, hard fading a 1 seed in general. Right. So I don't think that their ownership would reflect that difference. So I think either way, JSN is going to be like 90% owned in this contest. I'm guessing if they end up as the 5 seed, I'll probably play him about in line with that. If they end up as the 1 seed, I'm still going to have JSN on the majority of my lineups, but I'm guessing I'll be underweight. I'm guessing I'll be like, basically I'm going to play at like 65 to 70% JSN, because the way I would do this is I would think about, I'd be like, what do I think is their true odds to win the game, right? And if they're at home versus the Rams or the Niners, which is probably what it would be, I would say that their odds there are like 55-ish% to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, like, of the remaining 45%, what are the chances that JSN is one of the best 2 flex players who plays only 1 game? And I'd be like, that's probably like also 50-ish%. So that gets you to like a neutral ownership of what he should be of like 77, 78%. And then if I'm saying his actual ownership is 90, I'm saying he's over-owned. So I probably want to be actually under what I view as his neutral ownership in a similar ratio. So I would want to be like 65 versus what a projected ownership of 90 would be. That's kind of how my process of how I work these things out.
And it makes sense. It makes sense because it's like you're trying to fade the field as much as possible as well. So, it's like if the average person is going to have him on 9 of 10 teams, maybe you're sitting at 6 out of 10. Right. So I love that. And then for this next team here, when we go into the Broncos, I did want to ask, because this is I've heard both sides on this one, whether people care or not. But for this contest, the team that has the bye week, that's 1 less game. Like you obviously, if you get to the Super Bowl, you get double points in the Super Bowl. So you don't want to fully fade bye week teams if you think they're Super Bowl contenders. But, some of these other teams are going to play an extra game. And if you play on Wild Card Weekend and then go to the Super Bowl, you have a full extra game. So how much do you factor that into your decision-making here?
Yeah, I mean, similar to the Seahawks, the Broncos are going to be interesting because, they have some of the best Super Bowl odds, but you're not getting that first game. And so their first game is likely to come against a higher quality of competition than some of the other top Super Bowl competitors. You're not getting that scrub game against, Carolina or Tampa. If the Broncos are indeed the 1 seed, their most likely scenario is they will probably be playing like the Bills in round 2, right? That's going to be it's going to be like what, a pick 'em, Denver -1 in that spot. Like it's a dangerous spot. So I'm guessing the big difference between the Seahawks and the Broncos is that while maybe people don't have a ton of faith that the Seahawks would be like an overwhelming favorite versus the Rams or Niners, everybody has a ton of confidence in JSN as an individual, right? So everybody would be like, look, I don't even have to worry about what the Seahawks do. I'm just clicking JSN. I'm moving on to the next tab. The Broncos, though, is the opposite. Like if who the highest scoring Bronco is, that's a major question.
We don't even know.
I could see people going the other way. Like people want to feel comfortable in this contest. And so at the Seahawks, it's like it's very comfy to just click JSN because you can tell yourself multiple stories of how that works. I could easily see a scenario where people look at the Broncos, they go, look, they're probably getting, the Ravens or the Bills or the Texans in round 2. They could lose to any of those teams. I don't even know what Bronco I'd want to pick. I know they have a good defense. I'll just click Broncos defense and I'll just hope that they lose. And hey, if they don't lose, maybe the Broncos defense just outscores Sutton and Harvey and whoever else anyways. Because I'm a little bit contrarian, my mindset is, look, if they win one game, if they win 2 games, even if they don't get all the way to the Super Bowl, if they just win one game, you probably want a Broncos skill player in your lineup, or Knicks. I mean, I think we'll see. Like
Knicks is a major commitment. That's the thing. Knicks is a major commitment.
He is a major commitment, but I think he's going to be one of my favorite plays because you get the combination of the fact that I don't think people really believe in the Broncos as much as their odds suggest people, I think, should. And if they get to the Super Bowl, I would feel really good about Knicks being the optimal quarterback because everything's so spread out there. True. Right? Like, and Knicks also runs. So the chance that Knicks, like if it's a Broncos Niners Super Bowl, I think Knicks is the optimal quarterback. If it's a Broncos Rams Super Bowl, I think Knicks is the optimal quarterback. If it's a Broncos Eagles Super Bowl, it's a little dicier, but like I feel better about Knicks outscoring his teammates than I do Hurts because Barkley and Brown project so much better than anyone on the Broncos. If it's a Broncos Seahawks Super Bowl, I think Knicks is definitely the optimal quarterback.
Right.
It would be like the only guy that I would say is like probably in a very similar position to Knicks is like Caleb in the NFC, where everything's kind of running through him.
True.
So I'm pretty excited about him. But I think if they don't get to the Super Bowl, it's even still possible for Knicks, I think, to get there in 2 games. But it's probably at that point, I think if they lose in round 2, you want defense Lutz or nothing.
Yeah,
is probably the optimal. If they play 2 games, you probably want Harvey or Sutton.
Yeah, and that's the thing with you kind of do need, because if they have the bye and we're expecting them to have it, they kind of do need to go to the Super Bowl. Because if you only get 2 games on your quarterback, that's going to leave you pretty dry there. But you're right. I mean, like Ingram's a part-time player, so it's not like there's a huge threat of another player being like the must-have guy. Like what's the world where they go to the Super Bowl and Evan Ingram is that much better than every other tight end? It's not realistic given his usage. And same with really Harvey to some degree. I know the chat wants Harvey in there, but I just don't know. The game hasn't run through him, as you're pointing out.
Yeah, I think Harvey is a totally good pick. I think Harvey, though, the scenario for Harvey probably, I think, is a little bit more narrow, and I'll probably be a little bit underweight on him. I think where Harvey ends up being the optimal Bronco more often than not is they win 1 game and then lose in the conference championship, right? That's probably your best out for Harvey. And I would throw Sutton in there too. I think Sutton is pretty similar to Harvey in that scenario, where at that point, probably one of Sutton or Harvey outscores the defense or the kicker by a good amount. You probably want one of them in there.
If you were going to pick Sutton or Harvey, who'd you go with if we were going to play it that way?
I mean, it's a great question. I might go, man. I mean, I'll definitely have lineups of both is my cop-out answer, but
let's say hypothetically for a show we were doing one.
For a show we're doing one. Yeah, I know.
Hypothetically.
Probably Harvey is my preferred. but I also think he's going to be more owned, so I might have more Sutton. But anyways, Harvey in a vacuum right now is my favorite.
We're gonna create a lineup, but we want to make sure people are aware of our overarching strategy. So yeah, I'm with you on that. For this one, we'll leave Harvey there for now in case you want to go that way. But you probably again we'll leave it as if you were gonna make 5 teams, all 5 shouldn't be Harvey. That's where we look at that. What about the Rams here? Obviously, Stafford's in play. Puka's going to be a serious chalk play. His name's going to be on the sheet somewhere. And in full PPR, I don't know if Adams, if going, I mean, there is obviously if you were fading the Rams, maybe a 1 game, 2 touchdown, 3 touchdown Adams game where they lose. I mean, that could end up being the move. So it's definitely on the radar.
I mean, here's my issue with the Rams stuff and why I find Puka like uniquely difficult to fade. Like we talked about at the beginning of the show, the more games you play, the more likely the highest projected guy is eventually going to win out. They're not getting a bye. So if they make it all the way to the Super Bowl, they're playing 4 games. I think the odds that Kyren or Adams outscore Puka over 4 games, even 3 games, even 2 games, it's not very high. So if you're playing Kyren or Adams, you're hoping for them to lose. The big issue with that is for 98 yards of the field, Puka has a huge advantage over these guys. The one path for Kyren and Adams to outscore Puka is touchdowns. But if you're playing them to lose, it's really hard to say, well, I'm relying on the guys who score all the touchdowns. Like Adams and Kyren are so much more tied to the Rams winning because their value is so much more tied to touchdowns than Puka is. In the world where the Rams lose, and they're scoring fewer touchdowns, the odds just tilt so much more in Puka's favor because he's the guy who's just lapping them between the 20s. And if they have a bunch of red zone success, they're probably winning. So I do find it really difficult. And then Puka's just consolidates such a high percentage of their work that it's difficult to even get onto Stafford. So yeah, I'm struggling with the Ram stuff. I think I might build like an occasional Stafford lineup. I don't know that I'll build any Adams or Kyren lineups. I'm not saying you can't. You obviously can, and there's obviously paths. But I think for me, like especially if they end up sliding to the 6 and they're like at Philly, I would probably prefer to play for the outcome that Philly just has a gross, boring win. You don't actually want any Rams, that Puka isn't one of the top 2 scoring losing players, and that neither are Kyren or Adams, and that you just fade the whole team. I think that would be more comfortable for me than going with Kyren or Adams and hoping they somehow bank 2 touchdowns while also losing. That seems to me like a less likely scenario.
And using up a valuable flex or running back or wide receiver spot in the process. That's really the whole thing. So yeah, I'm fully with you on that with the Rams. I think Puka is the way to go here. All right. What about the Pats? We already mentioned Drake May. Is there anybody else that you're feeling here? I mean, the usage for Henderson with Ramondre back is annoying. There's no doubt about it, but they don't seem like they have a problem using both guys. So I don't know. Would you again, that's another one where you would almost in a losing game script, maybe Trevion could pop up for a big game, but is that something we want to project?
Well, the Patriots are really fascinating. And I think they're the most interesting team in the contest because if the Patriots go to the Super Bowl, I think there's absolutely no doubt that you want Drake May.
Right.
Like everything's so spread out. There's no obvious other guy. May's terrific fantasy quarterback. That's who you want. If they lose in like round 1, you probably want no Patriots because we just mentioned like they have a timeshare at running back. They split a bunch of stuff up between their wide receivers and tight ends. It's not an obvious candidate for who would be that 20-point losing flex player on the Patriots. But the most likely scenario based on their odds is that they in fact win round 1, maybe win round 2, don't get to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And so in the majority of scenarios, or at least the plurality of the scenarios, the Patriots are playing 2 or 3 games in this year's playoffs. And in that scenario, that usually lends itself to you wanting a skill player, not wanting the deep, wanting the kicker, not wanting the fade, not wanting the quarterback. but I think people will have a really hard time picking that skill player. And so, like, I'm going to play a ton of lineups. So my like cop-out answer is I will probably just be systematically overweight on each of Henderson, Stevenson, Diggs, and Hunter Henry. But like, if I had one lineup, who do I pick? I don't think there's like an obvious answer.
No.
But I think I would probably say Diggs is my favorite play on the Patriots. They've raised his route rate in particularly big games after I think preserving him for most of the year. In a losing script, they're probably going to have to pass. He is that wide receiver that can work consistently underneath. I think he's my single favorite Patriots play, but I can promise you I will have May lineups, Diggs lineups, Henderson lineups, Henry lineups, Stevenson lineups, all in this contest.
Yeah, and I think the way to really, this is a great team for talking about just the strategy for the contest, because if you think they're going to lose, you want to either, in the first week, you want to either fade them completely, have the kicker or defense, or have probably Hunter Henry, right? Like the odds of Hunter Henry, as we talked about earlier in the show, the odds of one tight end in tight end premium having one, maybe two big games and getting eliminated, that works. But over the course of 3 or 4 games, what are the odds that Hunter Henry is just like the engine for this team, like Travis Kelce style? Every week he's coming out and the offense is running through him. Probably not high. So for me, I'm looking at it, I'm saying, okay, if I have him losing right away, fade or kicker defense. If I have him winning 1, maybe 2 games, I want to be in this Diggs, Hendo, Henry area. And if we're going to the Super Bowl, it's May. And that's kind of that's the easiest way to play it. I think it makes a lot of sense. So so let's leave it like that for now. 49ers here. I'm going to put the obvious name in here. If you think they're losing, I mean, Kittle in the tight end premium has to be on the table too, though, right?
For sure.
Anybody else that we would consider? Purdy's been hot, but again, historically speaking in this contest, and it doesn't always have to be that way. Like Mahomes had some playoff runs where he didn't run a ton, but for the most part, because it's 4-point passing, and it's only -1 for turnovers and interceptions, you can kind of go. Historically, we've seen a lot of mobile quarterbacks finish in the money, right? It's been Allen, it's been Hurts, it's been guys like that.
There will only be 3 Niners options in my pool. We've already talked through like 4 teams, and I've already talked through ways in which I'm trying to get different from the field. I like to gal brain. I don't think this is going to be one of the spots that I do it. The 49ers have, in my opinion, the best offense of any team in the playoffs. They also have, in my opinion, the worst defense of any team in the playoffs. I think any game that they play is going to be pretty fun. I don't see this as a team that I want to hard fade or soft fade, even in a loss. I think even if I'm playing the Niners to lose round 1, I probably still want McCaffrey or Kittle on those teams. And then I think Purdy is in play. He's showed so much upside that I think like I would rate Purdy's odds of being the optimal quarterback in a Niners Super Bowl like a little higher, I think, than Stafford in a Rams Super Bowl. I think I prefer Purdy outscoring CMC as an outcome. And I know it's not quite that simple, but I think that that's actually a little bit more likely than Stafford outscoring Puka, just because Purdy has the rushing upside to score multiple rushing touchdowns in a game in a way that Matthew Stafford really doesn't. But I think generally I'm probably going to like maybe mix in a Purdy lineup or 2. I might not play him at all. I'm going to definitely play a lot of CMC. So will everybody. And I'll make it a point to be overweight George Kittle, I think, in this contest overall as well, who I think has multiple paths. They lose 1 game, like you mentioned, tight end premium, Kittle can absolutely get there. I also think it's at least conceivable that if Kittle doesn't even outscore CMC, but can like stay within touching distance of CMC, and they get to the Super Bowl, it's not a great tight end year. Like, think of who the best tight ends are. McBride's not here in the playoffs. Bowers isn't here in the playoffs. Like, what if they play, like they can play the Broncos Super Bowl. The Broncos don't have any real tight end. The Patriots don't have any real tight. I mean, Hunter Henry's fine, but he's not like a superstar tight end.
You just go through the list, like no Pitts, no Fannin, no Warren. Like, just look at the guys who finished towards the top. Like, you're right. There really aren't any of those guys available. So, and that's the thing. And same thing with Purdy, though, when you think about it, like there's a world where what if it is in the conference championship, Purdy, the 49ers versus the Seahawks, and then like the Broncos versus the Texans. There is a world where Purdy ends up being a guy that plays 4 games, which because of the double points for the Super Bowl is 5 games. There is a world where he outscores these guys drastically, like,
Yeah.
or if it's Broncos and Texans, and then the Seahawks and Broncos only have they have the bye week, so you have limited games for them. Like, there's a world where the difference between the top running backs isn't that big, but the difference between the top quarterbacks is, and that's something you got to factor in when making those calls.
For sure. Yeah. Like I totally agree with that. Right. Like it's hard to like go through all, but just if you think about it, like and it's never this simple, but like, let's say that CMC averages 20 points per game, in all 4 games, or let's even say 22, right? And the Super Bowl counts twice. So it's basically 5 games at 22 points per game. And so that puts him at 110. And let's say Kittle has 18. So that puts him at 90. But like, in that scenario, let's say they play the Broncos in the Super Bowl. Like, would you bet that RJ Harvey is outscoring Evan Ingram by more than 20 in that scenario? Like, for sure I would, right? Easily. Like pretty easily. So in that scenario, like your highest scoring 2v2, even though CMC's outscoring Kittle, is actually Harvey Kittle, not CMC Ingram, right? And it's never that simple, because you could have scenarios where CMC and Harvey are both optimal, and you have some other tight end. But the tight end field this year is so uniquely weak. Like, for years, when we were doing this contest, the highest scoring regular season tight ends were Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews. And usually all 3 of them were in the playoffs.
All available, yep.
But like this year, that's not the case, where we get all the best tight ends in the regular season. The only one who's here is Kittle. So I think it's hard for me to know how I'm going to play it, because I think it's so ownership dependent. Like, how alive to that are people going to be? Then are people going to prioritize Kittle being like the only comfortable, obvious tight end option? Or will people just be like, I'm not doing my lineup without Christian McCaffrey. He's the best scoring player in fantasy football. Right. I don't really know how it's going to go. So it's hard for me to know how I'm going to play it, but I'm super interested in CMC and Kittle, and I'll probably maybe mix in a Purdy. I'm not fading this team. Their defense is so bad. Their offense is so good.
And they're finally healthy for once. They finally have the offense that they've wanted to have. Purdy missed a ton of time. Kittle was banged up. Ricky Pearsall finally looks like himself, right? They got the fullbacks and the block tight ends going. Like, he finally looked like themselves. So good team there. Okay. For the sake of time here, so we're not doing a 7-hour show, why don't we rapid fire a couple of these teams here? Eagles, if you're going an Eagle or a couple names we want to throw on the sheet, let's just throw them in there real quick.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are pretty simple. If you're playing them to lose, I think the best options are you either go A.J. Brown or you go hard or soft fade. If you're playing him to go all the way to the Super Bowl, then it's Hurts or it's Barkley. Yeah. And I think that's really the decision is do you think they're going to win multiple games? You go Hurts or Barkley. If they're going to lose, it's Brown or the fade. I think
Hurts is also, and we've actually seen this. Hurts is also the kind of quarterback that could lose in the NFC Championship and be the optimal quarterback
for sure,
because of the way he plays. So that's on the table too. Bills, yeah. Josh Allen's name's got to go on here. What's the case for going James Cook over Josh Allen? In like what do you like? What would you have to be predicting for that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, this is a spot where I think probably those two are going to control like 98% of the total ownership, and probably rightfully so. Jeez. Yeah, I think the case for James Cook versus Josh Allen is just, I mean, this year Cook has consolidated way more of the running back work than he had in previous seasons. And if you think that the Bills will not get to the Super Bowl, and especially if you think that one of these other quarterbacks, like a May or a Nix or a Hurts, where a lot of the stuff runs through them, do get to the Super Bowl, then yeah, I think in that scenario, more than likely James Cook is optimal, even if he's getting outscored by Josh Allen. So I think probably the stories you tell with the Bills is like, if they get all the way to the Super Bowl, it's almost definitely Allen. If they make it 3 games, it could be Allen, depending on who you think is getting to the Super Bowl. And if they only play, 2 games, it's probably Cook. 3 games, it could be Cook or Allen. And then if it's just 1 game, then like maybe it's Cook. Could also be like Dalton Kincaid with the tight end spam, or you could just say, hey, negative game script, not Cook's specialty. I'll fade the whole thing. So I think a lot's in play with the Bills, but Allen, Cook obviously are going to be the obvious plays.
I kind of feel like with the Bills, it's almost an all or nothing. Where I think I'm either going to be doing Allen or I might go full fade on this team.
Okay.
I might have to.
Yeah. All right. That's interesting. Yeah.
Texans. Nico's on the table.
Texans are kind of, to me, Seahawks of the AFC, where like I'm probably doing Nico or I'm doing a fade.
Yeah.
I don't know what the
Schultz could. There's a possibility Schultz is that 1 game PPR tight end spam play.
Yeah.
Because he's capable. He's capable of that in this format. Like AJ Barner's more of like a inline blocker. Blocked on 9 pass plays last week, but he's got touchdown equity, but you don't get tight end premium for touchdowns. Schultz is the opposite, where we've seen him get 9 targets. I think he got a game with 12 targets on the resume this year. So if you're fading the Texans, it's not crazy to just throw Schultz into a flex spot or somewhere.
Totally agree with that. And I mean, like we said at the outset, it's similar to what I kept saying with the Rams. Like, again, if like Barner, like you mentioned, like his upside is really comes through the end zone. Players whose upside comes through touchdowns are not ideal candidates for fades, because players whose upside comes through touchdowns more than likely are part of wins. I mean, it doesn't always work that way. I mean, Ferguson got 3 touchdowns, but when you're trying to play
game, there was 100 points scored in that game.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's like extreme outlier.
So if you're trying to play through the odds and you're trying to do like a fancy play where you're playing the lower owned, unlikely outcome, how does this player beat the higher projected guy in a loss? It's like the way that Schultz collects points is just so much more conducive to that in a loss, because he is that classic tight end that can just rack up 8-9 yard catches in the second half. They're down by 14 points. They're leaving him wide open. That's like classic Dalton Schultz game. So I agree. He's a play.
If Nico and Jaden Higgins are scoring these 75-yard touchdowns like they've been, that's you're probably winning that game, So I'm with it on that one. What about the Jags here? I know you mentioned Lawrence. If you're a Duval believer, he's been playing great. Is there anybody else you would consider? I mean, like for a long-term run, like ETN. ETN, he could be a guy in a 2 if they play in 2 games, right? Win 1, lose 1.
I mean, I would say that the Jags are pretty similar to what we mentioned with the Patriots, I guess, which is that if they go to the Super Bowl, it's almost certainly Lawrence.
Right.
If they lose right away because it's so spread, the easy thing to do is just to fade them. But like similar to the Patriots, they're probably going to be favored in their round 1 game.
Right.
And so the modal outcome for them is probably they play 2 games or 3 games, and in that outcome, the most likely scenario is it's going to be a Jag skill player. You just have to pick the right one, and that's the fascinating part of the contest. So like, I think my strategy will be similar to what it was with the Patriots. Is I'm going to spread my bets between Etienne and Myers and Strange, and maybe even you could argue for Thomas or Parker Washington. I mean, there's so many guys, but like I probably want to be overweight Jag skill players as a collective. Choosing the right one is going to be very difficult, but I think that's also why the ownership is going to be lower on all these skill players than it probably should be, because if they win 1 game, if they win 2 games, but they don't get to the Super Bowl, it's you don't want to fade that team. You probably don't want Lawrence. So like one of these guys is probably getting there.
I don't want Strange here. It's entirely possible. If Brenton Strange is the play, then I will be winning 0 money this year.
Okay.
I'll put it that way. I'm just not doing that. I'm not doing it. He's Cade Otton, and I get it. Cade Otton capable of big things, but when all the wide receivers are healthy, I can't do it. Can't click it. What about the Bears, man? I know we mentioned Caleb Williams. Entirely again, deep run. You don't want to have him. Oof. This team's a mess too, huh?
I mean, here's the thing. The Bears are uniquely interesting in that the way you fade them to me is almost like if you're fading the Bears fully, I think you have to hard fade because they will be playing a game in Chicago. I don't want their kicker.
No,
um, their defense is ass,
yeah,
so I don't want that either.
we don't want
So
that.
I'm a, so like I for the most part I kind of just mix these things around, but like the Bears will uniquely be in lineups that I'm taking no Bears. I'm just doing hard fade. I'm not messing around with their defense or their kicker. Um,
Well, if they're
yeah,
going
I
to get
think
whooped, they're probably going to get whooped. That's the kind of problem there.
exactly. Um, yeah, I mean the Bears are very interesting. I think if you want to play them to win like one game and then get beat, that makes like Swift pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Um, if you if you want, I mean Caleb is in charge of so much of what they do, and it's so spread out that he is again one of these quarterbacks who it's very possible, especially since he doesn't have the bye. He could be optimal in a world where they play 2 games or 3 games.
Yeah.
It's in the realm of possibilities for sure.
I wouldn't be shocked. I would not be shocked to see a lot of the CMC teams having someone like Loveland as their tight end.
Yeah,
Because if you're
that's pretty
going
good.
CMC, you can't use Kittle. And then when you
Yeah,
start looking at the list without Kittle on it, where it's Henry and Schultz and Strange and Loveland, I think
yeah,
that's going to be a popular combination. So maybe
I agree.
that's something people got to think about too, where it's like, do you want to play that combination if everyone else is doing it, or do you want to try and get a little different?
Yeah, that's a really great point. I agree with that. And look, I mean, I wouldn't be me on this program if I didn't shout out Luther Burden. I don't know that I'll have a ton. I don't think he'll be super highly owned. I can promise you, I will have more than 0 Luther Burden
Yeah.
shares in this tournament for sure.
I've been saying it on this show, man. I'm like, go out and get him in Dynasty now, and I'm willing
Yeah,
to overpay, man. What I'm willing to pay more than first is 2 for because here's the thing: when I look at some of these guys with the profiles like this that have a part-time role as rookies and are popping in a part-time role, I always look back and I'm like, damn it, why didn't I buy more Godwin? Why didn't I buy more JSN? Why didn't I just give up 2 firsts when I had the chance? Why didn't I buy more CD Lamb? CD Lamb had, the
Mhm.
94% route participation, slot snaps as a rookie. And it was like, we knew he wasn't playing a full-time role. We knew that he was eventually going to. It's like 2 firsts. Is that too much for Burden right now? Or is that the price?
That's probably an overpay, to be honest. But like do I think he's gonna be worth that? Like, put me on True Serum. I do. I'm a huge fan of his. Like,
Me too,
it's
man.
not even just the stats. Like, I see a lot of people are like, oh, you can't project the yards per. I understand all that, dude. Like, just watch this guy. He moves so
Right.
different.
He's
Like,
awesome.
he looks like he pops off of the screen,
He's not
and
small either. Like that's the other
he's
part of
not
it. Is like
small. He's got
people said that
alpha
about
size.
JSN. Like JSN was only playing slot, and I was like looking at JSN. I'm like, this guy's not just going to be a slot guy. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I look at Burden. I'm like, I don't think that's his destiny to just play only slot. So, I
yeah.
mean, I'm willing to go there first. If you can get him for a first and a second right now, I say Jan.
Yeah, I would totally send that. I think he's phenomenal, and I mean, I would ask people to think back on like what was the rap on him as a prospect. Everybody kind of agreed he was really high variance. Like he used to be like this Debbie 101 guy, ton of physical upside. The question was like there was all these kind of various reports of who knows how true they were about character, mental commitment, all that stuff in the pre-draft process. Could he have the technical skills? Like to me, once you start to see proof of concept with a player that everybody really agreed had a ton of raw talent, like the upside is really, really high. So super in on him in
Sure.
Dynasty, and I'll draft him in this. The Ravens.
He's in our lineup. He's the first player I'm putting in our lineup right
All
now.
right, let's fucking do it. Great, let's do
You
it.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Awesome.
hey, you know what? If
Well,
we're getting fired up, dude, we're getting fired up. We're fired up.
I'm fired up.
So, let's go.
The
Ravens, man.
Yeah, I mean that's what a team. I mean I think that people are going to play a lot of Derrick Henry,
Right.
but he's an interesting player. I mean, look, it's never comfortable to be fading Derrick Henry, but if they lose, you probably want to fade Derrick Henry. He's like a really game script dependent
This is the
running
most
back.
game script dependent team across the board there's ever been. Like
Right.
Zay Flowers has never been bad, but when the game script gets away from him, he has terrible games. But when the game script goes the other way, he could have 125 yards, right? So
For sure.
super game script dependent team.
Yeah. So I mean, I think like as much as Henry, like I think Henry is going to be. It's so annoying because like I hate. I've spent like a decent chunk of my life, not all of it, like a decent chunk of my life, being lower in the field on Derrick Henry, and it so rarely works out.
Right.
But like, I do think in this contest, like he will be overplayed, and the reason for that is this: the path for him to succeed, I think, is relatively narrow. Because and it's not that he's a bad play. It's just I would guess he's going to be like 70% ish played in this tournament. That could be crazy wrong, but we're really early on. I just think that's going to be the case. And the issue with that is if they lose in their very first game, which is probably going to be roughly a pick'em, Henry in a loss versus the Texans defense is like just not likely to be one of the higher scoring flex players. Like that's a horrible situation for him.
Right.
It's more likely in that loss scenario you want to fade the Ravens entirely, or frankly, you would want Zay Flowers. If they go all the way to the Super Bowl, we kind of have to assume that Lamar looks way better than he's looked recently.
Right.
And you probably want Lamar Jackson, not Derrick Henry. So your path for Henry being the optimal, I think, is very specific, that they win one game or maybe two games. And that's obviously plausible, but I think that odds is like lower than the rate at which he is going to be played, which means I'll probably be under the field. It's not like I'm going to have zero Henry. I'll definitely have Henry, but I think the key is if you're drafting Henry, I think that is the scenario you're playing for, is they win one game and then lose, or they win two games and then lose. I think he's pretty dead to Lamar if they make the Super Bowl. And I think he's not going to be a very likely candidate to be one of the higher scoring players in a loss, especially versus one of the best defenses in the whole playoffs.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. And that's, if we're going to go there, I say we go Flowers, because he is, if we're going to say that, if you fade him, I love the Flowers fade there, because he does have these games when they're back against the ropes where he gets peppered. Right. So
yeah,
I love that. Packers side, another kind of tough team. What do you think, man? Jakob,
people are not gonna play much of the Packers. This is what I think is gonna happen. I think the Packers are gonna have a really high rate of defense kicker hard fade. No one believes in them going to the Super Bowl. No one really wants to play Jacobs and losing game script. Nobody wants to pick one of these wide receivers, that's for sure. Right. So I think it's going to be a team that is going to be really lowly played. I will probably be slightly above the field on like Jacobs, and I'll probably be slightly above the field on Christian Watson. That doesn't mean that I'll play even them both combined in over 50% of my lineups, but like you only need to go back 2 years ago to the Packers being in a super similar spot. They were the 7 seed against the Cowboys. Nobody believed in them. No one was playing Packers. At that time, I was like, look, they have a half decent odds. This could also just be a shootout where one of them gets in. They're probably going to be playing the Bears, who, like the Cowboys that year, are like a very beatable defense. So that year, other things didn't necessarily go my way in the contest, but one thing I really got right, I was super above the field on Aaron Jones, and he ended up being a huge win piece for me. So I'll probably try to run that back. I expect to be like 2x the field on each of Jacobs and Christian Watson. That I don't think that'll take much, because I think people are going to avoid them like the plague, but that's probably where my head is at.
And I mean, you got to keep in mind that there are paths to like crazy things happening. Like last year, the chief you needed to have, as crazy as it is Xavier Worthy, because he had that super garbage time Super Bowl game that was worth like 1 million points, So like guys like Christian Watson that can just pop off in a singular game, or can, go on a little tear where they're scoring touchdowns every week. Like, you want to at least paint that picture. With Flowers and Watson, you can do it. With some of these other guys, though, it's like, that's why I'm like, I'm deleting Brenton Strange's name from the sheet.
Yeah, you can delete it. Because he has so many shooters, though, man. People love Brenton Strange out there.
They do, and I wish them well. But I think the Brenton Strange shooters and the K-Dot, they're gonna have a stack of cards next to their K-Dot and cards in the attic soon. So I don't know, man.
We did a tiers episode a while ago, a Dynasty tiers for tight ends, and like the chat was just berating me for not having Brenton Strange high enough. Like it was just people want the moon and the stars for Brenton Strange. They love that guy.
He's a good real life inline two-way blocking tight end for a guy, Liam Cohen, that is going back through time. Use Kate Otten that way, use Tyler Higbee that way, and when a bunch of people are hurt, then fine. But like when the
Yeah.
wide receivers are healthy, everything goes through them. And just think of how much slot work is done, right? Like in the modern fantasy football, you need your tight end to play slot, like a good chunk of slot. So if the main point of the offense is to have the key wide receiver run out of the slot, you're drawing dead. Speaking of drawing
there's a
dead,
reason why one of the first things Liam Cohen did was just dump Evan Ingram for nothing, because he was like, we don't need this at tight end. We're gonna focus on actual wide receivers in the slot, and our tight end, we need him to be able to block, and then we'll use them when we use them up the seams and stuff. But like the goal of their tight end position is to be that sixth O lineman, to be an option in the receiving game. But they're not a team that's looking to feature proactively a receiving tight end. I totally agree with that. They would have kept Evan Ingram if they wanted to.
Exactly. Yeah. And same thing. They got rid of Christian Kirk because he wasn't a good enough slot wide receiver. That's how seriously they take the guy in the slot. They traded for Jacoby Myers for that reason. Like, so it's not appealing to me. Can we just, again, for the sake of time, I don't want to keep you for forever. Steelers, Buccaneers, Panthers, full fades for us. Because here's the thing. When you're going to make your own decisions, 2 of these teams are going to be off this sheet, or 3 of them, right? Like so you're not going to have to worry about it. A couple of these teams are going to be completely gone. And we're probably going to fade whoever is coming out of there as the Bucs or Panthers anyway, because they're going to be playing against a very good 5 seed, whoever ends up being. So what the Chargers?
I'll say one thing. If the Steelers somehow get in, because I am a sick individual, I'm not saying I'll have a lot of them, but I promise you I'll be above the field on Kenny Gainwell, because his capacity to rack up like 9 catches in a round 1 loss is just so obvious, and like no one believes in the Steelers. And the big thing that I find that people make a mistake with in this tournament is that the rate at which teams are hard faded or soft faded is usually directly correlated to their odds of winning round 1. And that I obviously understand that. But
if that's how it went every year, then we'd all be rich just from betting on that happening every year.
Well, and it's not even just that. It's like 6 teams are going to lose in round 1. That is a guarantee. So like it's not like you don't necessarily want to treat, because again, of the 6 teams that lose in round 1, 2 of those are going to be hard fades. 2 are probably going to be kicker and defense. And then 2 are going to be the highest scoring skill players from a single game playing team. Yes. But like, just because the Steelers are way more likely to lose in round 1 than other teams that will also lose in round 1, it doesn't mean that they're that much less likely to have one of those higher scoring skill players that is out in round 1. And so something that I've tended to be open to is playing the guys that everyone thinks are going to lose and just say, look, I think the Steelers are going to lose too. But like, why can't Kenny Gainwell in a 1-game scenario outscore Saquon Barkley? Because like, if the Eagles lose and the Steelers lose, and you're getting negative game script for both, like I like Gainwell in negative game script just as much as I like Barkley in negative game script. Like he could easily outscore Derrick Henry, where if the Ravens, well, I guess that can't happen. They can't both be in the playoffs, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right. No, I know what you're saying. It's like if both teams lose and your lineup has Gainwell and someone else has Barkley, and Gainwell scores 4 more points than Barkley, then you're ahead of that person. Right. Exactly. It's locked in. So I get it. And same thing goes for Bucs, Panthers. Like, we don't want to just say, hey, by the way, we're never using any of these guys. Like, it could easily be a world where Mike Evans or Chris Godwin or Tedero McMillan has a game in a loss that, is meaningful to the tournament. So
I'm open to all those guys. Gainwell is like my favorite just because like the way he racks up points is just so perfectly conducive to they lose. It's just he's just like gonna get 9 targets. No, let's assume the Ravens make the playoffs because that's way more likely. So, but if the Steelers happen to do it, we'll revisit.
All right, let's start at the top then. Well, obviously, first things first, Luther Burden's in our lineup. For those that just joining us or watching later, we're making an FFPC lineup. If you want to get set up, use promo code ALARM at MyFFPC, or just go ahead and hit that QR code I put over Sanderson's face there. And if no one scans that code, we don't let him out. So someone's got to scan it right now. We got to let him out of QR code jail. So
All right.
get the cannon. It's okay. Let's start at the top.
Here be my first question, but that I think is going to determine what quarterback I pick in most of my lineups. And I'm curious if your process is going to be different. But the question I'm asking is basically, who do I think is coming out of the AFC? Because I think most of the more obvious, if they make it to the Super Bowl, I want their quarterback, are AFC teams. I think most of the NFC teams, that's less clearly true for. So who are we playing to be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl? Because I think that really determines who our quarterback pick is.
Yeah. And again, you're the guest, so this is your team. I think it's all or nothing with Allen, right? Like Knicks, May, Allen. I know you were interested in Knicks. I'm gonna have a bunch of May teams of my own, for sure. So, did you want to do this one as the Knicks, Allen, or Lawrence team here?
Well, so
you made a compelling case for Bo Nix. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that basically the teams that I'm very sure I want the quarterback of if they make the Super Bowl are like tons of AFC teams. It's Knicks,
right?
It's May, it's Lawrence, it's Allen, and then it's Jackson. So that's like 5 teams where if they make the Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure I want their quarterback. The only teams in the AFC where I would say I'm not sure. I mean, really, well, I guess I'm discounting the Chargers. The Chargers too. I just don't think they have any shot. But like the only team basically where I think they make the Super Bowl and I don't want their quarterback is probably the Texans in the AFC. Right. So basically, the first question I ask is, am I building the Texans to make a Super Bowl or not? Because if I am, then I want an NFC quarterback. But otherwise, I'm probably looking at AFC quarterback. I made the case for Knicks, and I know you will have probably less Bo Nix teams. So let's start this off with Mr. Bo Nix.
I love that. I think that creates for more because if we go with an NFC quarterback, then it creates a very annoying decision-making tree for the rest of these AFC teams, to be honest. Because like now that we put Knicks in there, we're saying, hey, we need this team to win. We need this team to go to the conference championship at least, right? We need them to play in at least that many games, so we can kind of rule out May. And now we're into the Patriots realm of, okay, we do think they win 1, maybe 2 games. So we are living in this group here, unless we want to fully fade them.
Yeah. So basically, if the Broncos are going to the Super Bowl, that kind of eliminates anyone else from going to the Super Bowl. So let's figure out what we want to do with the Patriots and the Jags and some of these other AFC teams. So like, what is our bracket? So it's we're probably looking at what? We're looking at Patriots, Chargers, Jaguars, Bills, and Texans, Ravens. That's the most likely matchups, right?
Most likely, yep.
So yeah, how do we want to play those games in terms of who's going to win, in terms of what our bracket is going to be? Yeah, do you have strong feelings? I think the Patriots are going to beat the Chargers.
I think the Patriots are going to beat the Chargers, and as much as I want to do the Flowers play, I kind of do think the Ravens can win. I think maybe we should go with Flowers though, because we kind of talked through it that sure. even a 2-game sample size, we can go there.
All right, so if we're gonna go,
do you want to fully fade the Bills? That's the question of the day.
Well, so like first thing, if we're gonna go Flowers, that means we're assuming the Texans win. So that means I think we also have to play Nico.
Yep.
So I think a Flowers play, Flowers play means a Nico play.
Yeah, we'll put him in here.
So that now uses up one of our 2 games that we're taking both sides of. So we only have one other game we can take both sides of.
Right.
So then we get to the Bills and the Jaguars. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is the way you beat the Jaguars is through the pass. They're a big pass funnel. So I don't know if I love James Cook in a loss there, or we think that they win. So yeah, I think we could go.
I mean, you could beat the run on the Bills.
Win.
You can run on the Bills.
If we want to go Bills win, we probably play either Cook, Etienne, or Cook nothing. If we want to say the Jags win, then we probably want to go Etienne and nothing from the Bills.
I say we say that the Jags win and go Etienne.
Okay.
And we're going to need running backs because I think we kind of already foreshadowed to us using Kittle instead of CMC.
All right, so let's put go to your team there. Let's just put the Bills underneath kicker as one of our 2 hard fades then. Like or if we want to use their kicker, that's fine too. But their kicker sucks. It's like Michael.
Oh yeah,
Thatcher.
hard fade. Yeah, that's what we want.
All right. Okay, so that's one of our two.
Good setup.
All right, and then that leaves one AFC game. So we haven't done anything the Chargers or the Patriots. So like what we're not doing May, obviously. We're gonna want a Patriot. So are we gonna go Diggs, Hendo, or Hunter Henry here? I think I like Diggs.
I think I like
I'm
Diggs.
open to whoever.
That's the question of the day here, but I think we go Diggs in that one, and because I think he in 1 to 2 wins and a loss, he can be good in either both or all three of those games.
And
I think once you get out of one game, I think Henry loses some luster.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't even see 2 full games where he's just the guy. I think one game, if you're fading, I think Henry probably belongs in the if you're fading the Patriots, maybe you play him category.
For sure. All right, and then we can always move this around, but let's why don't we tentatively put Dicker the kicker in there for us?
Yeah, good. All right.
All right, that's our AFC.
All right, let's jump to NFC here.
Yeah.
And why don't we just do Kittle right away because we said we were going to do that.
Okay. All right. So for fade and CMC, that gives us some flexibility. I think my basically, I think the way I'm going to look at the NFC is Puka, CMC, JSN. I think are going to be the 3 highest played players in this. I'm guessing, and my goal will be to probably have 2 of the 3 in each of my lineups. So if I'm fine going with Kittle here, then that makes me more open to doing. Although now I'm realizing we're pretty much at the end of the road here. So if we do JSN and we do Puka, that would mean we're probably doing what, Barkley?
Yeah, I mean that's fine though because we wanted to be at the end of the road. It's either Barkley or Jacobs, right? Like that's where we're living, and I think the odds of Barkley having not only Barkley having multiple games, but Barkley also he can rip off massive chunk plays. Like I don't think that part of his game has gone away. So in a sample size like this, like I could see them winning, even if they just win one game. Like Barkley in that game that they win, if he has 170 yards, like he's still so capable of that.
So now I just want to make sure we're not screwing ourselves. So the only thing that's tricky is I have no idea who's going to get the bye in the.
We're gonna redo this entire lineup.
So we'll redo this if this gets.
I wouldn't overdo it. I wouldn't overdo it, bro. Because
that's true.
Yeah, you and me in the DMs.
Yeah. Because right now the teams we're fading are in the NFC are the Bears and the Packers. I think that's it, right? Yeah, because there's 4 fades total, so it's the Bears and the Packers,
and whoever the NFC, whoever wins the NFC South.
Oh, and whoever wins the NFC South. Wait, what?
So we basically just we're fading, we're fading NFC South, right? So we plug it in like that. Bills.
How are we fading 5 teams? Am I like, is my brain breaking from math here?
Well, because the Steelers are going to be eliminated. The Steelers, we're saying the Steelers don't make the playoffs.
Right, but we're fading the Bills. We're fading the Chargers. We're fading NFC South winner. Oh, we're not fading the Bears. We have Luther Burden. That's why.
We have Luther Burden. That's right. We put him in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, now I get it. Yeah. Right.
So basically, what we're doing is Packers defense.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Which
perfect.
Again, we reserve the right to swap out NFC South defense or whatever, but Packers got a good defense. So
Yeah, that's fine by me. For
sure. So yeah, that's how you do one of these, man. And it's the coolest format, in my opinion. Absolutely awesome. So make sure you jump in and you get all set up with that. There's 2 contests, $35 one and a $200 one. If it's your first time playing, my advice is to, instead of just doing like one $200 one, do a couple entries in the $35 one and kind of work through it the way Sanderson and I mentioned there. So we're going to put this one in and we're going to go through and line it all up. But make sure you guys are set up. Go to myffpc.com. Use promo code ALARM. So Sanderson, dude, thank you so much for coming in. I know you got your travel woes going on, man, and we kept you a little extra, dude. So I really appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find your stuff and where they can find most of your strategy and all this stuff.
For sure, man. Yeah, I mean, you can find, frankly, a lot of it on Twitter, but you can definitely find it on Thinking About Thinking, which is just my name, Jakob Sanderson, .substack.com. It's also linked in the bio on my Twitter page. I will be doing at least 2, maybe 3 articles on my thoughts on the FFPC Playoff Challenge next week, basically as soon as we have the bracket set. So keep a lookout on for that if you want in on any of that content. And then we'll have stuff going year round. You know, it's going to be dynasty season soon. We'll have some strategy articles. We'll get going for all the rookie content, all that good stuff. But yeah, in the near term, it's going to be all FFPC Challenge next week. One of my favorites. And thanks for having me on this one.
Thanks for coming on. And dude, please,
Appreciate
you got to put me on to this fantasy playoff hockey, dude. Because
Yeah,
I didn't even know that was a thing. And now I'm thinking about my brother-in-law. He's like, he has not missed a Bruins game. He records them if he doesn't see. He hasn't not missed a Bruins game, I think, in like 9 years, dude. Like, he's so plugged in, dude.
Nice.
Yeah, we play fantasy hockey during the season and stuff, so, like, we got to get
in my mind, your brother is just like Ben Affleck in The Town, just like walking around with a Bruins shirt, like a Sean Thornton jersey.
100% is, dude. 100%. We got to hurt somebody, and you can't tell anybody, right? Whose car are we taking? That's what we got going on over here.
Yeah.
Go to Bruins game. Whose car are we taking? So yeah,
we gotta hurt somebody, and I can't tell you why.
you pretty much nailed it.
You can't ask any questions.
Can't ask any questions. So thank you very much, dude. You feel free to get out of here. I just want to give one last shout out. I got to give a little shout out to our friends over at the USA Sports Fan Chains. If you won your championship or not, grab one for your league. They got a discount right now. Promo code ALARM gets you 5% off. And for the first, I think they have like 800 last spots where no tax on these products. So USA Sports Fan Chains, durable, super cool, makes everybody in your league happy because you got a gift for everybody in the league. The winner gets to wear it at the banquet, whatever you guys do, the draft, the Zoom. So definitely get that set up now. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm having a blast with this. We're going to be doing a bunch more content on this all next week. I got another article coming out on specific players. There's one already up there on strategy, just the basics of the content and all these things. And we covered it all pretty much today. So you guys are locked in on that. But that's going to be it for us here over at Fantasy Alarm. Until next time, I'll see you guys.
Adios, turd nuggets.